welcome to Mike and Eric Drink a Beer, episode 2.
Oh, we've made it to episode 2.
I know, just the fact that an episode 2 occurred is amazing, right? What are you drinking, Mike?
I am drinking, I'm going to pour out a Dolphin Sparkles. It's a double IPA from Toppling Goliath, who is a fantastic brewery. And these are hard to come by around here on the East Coast. So I'm of the mindset, at least until next Tuesday, drink them if you got them.
Breaking open the cellar. I've got an Earth Rider North Tower Stout.
Ooh.
Which is out of Superior, Wisconsin, and just won the silver medal, I think 2 weeks ago at the Great American Beer Festival.
Nice. I'm drinking out of my, I don't know if you can see it, out of my, let's turn it that way, out of my Mocktoberfest glass.
Yeah. I'm back to my trusty Thirsty Pagan, but you can see the consistency of this is something approaching motor oil, right? So
I've got a couple of those waiting for the weekend. We finally got some cold weather out here.
Yeah, I've started to accrue different beers from the region as we think about heading south for the winter. So we've had a mere 11 inches of snow so far.
That's it?
Yeah, I know, right? I was joking earlier, right, that I went out and trekked to the wall, made sure that the Canadians had not invaded yet, and everything seems okay. So I've come back inside for the evening to record this. All right, so enough of that. So we're going to talk about content from a couple angles, I think, today. We talking about kind of the technical side of things, what's happened over the last 20 years cyclically that's led to this content explosion, and then just what we're watching and reading and the content we're enjoying at the moment. So you want to start off from kind of what you're seeing as far as digital media?
Yeah, I mean, this is the world I live in, and it's been nuts, right? I mean, it's always been a fire hose, and it just keeps cranking out even more. Whether it's new Substack newsletters or regular newsletters coming I see it mostly out of journalism. With every reporter is now got a newsletter,
right? Because they've been fired.
Right, exactly, right. So they're trying to figure out what they do with that, and and every company's pumping out content. Why? Because reporters have been fired, and there's not enough media there, so they're creating their own. And then you've got this, everybody home, so Netflix and Apple TV and Peacock and pick one is coming out with tons of content. Some of it's just absolute crap, but some of it is really, really good. Like there's some good stuff coming out.
Yeah, I was thinking about this today. I was thinking about it today from the technical angle, and trying to think kind of historically. So I was trying to remember the year that I either owned or saw the first mobile phone with a camera on the back. And the first memory I have of one is, you remember that the old Nokia that had kind of a semicircle bottom and then it went up and it was square at the top, and all the controls on the bottom were in a circle? That was the first camera phone I ever remember seeing. My buddy Tor had one. He worked at Nokia at the time and had like an early prototype version. So anyway, so I was trying to mark that date, right? Like 2002, 3, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And then, so you take kind of mobile, fast forward a bit, and it's 2005, and you start getting, the first instances of cloud infrastructure, right? With EC2 and that kind of stuff. Fast forward a bit, you get broadband speeds increasing everywhere. Fast forward a bit, you've increased the camera, and now you got video recording on, holding in your hand. Fast forward a bit, you hit APIs coming into vogue and real scale. And then all of a sudden, we hit kind of 2000, I don't even know, 12, 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there, where YouTube, Instagram, now TikTok, on the low end meaning, user generated, I hate that word, but user generated content, exploding up into Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, all these other streaming services, Spotify, Substack, everything you've named, down to Kindle ebooks. It's just this Cambrian explosion of content. But I think it's useful to see, kind of this emergent perfect storm that came together to allow all of that. Mobile phones, APIs, cloud infrastructure scaling, video, be a video in our hand, essentially, all of these things coming together, which took us over 15 years to build. And we're only now seeing the fruits of it today.
Well, I mean, we're only I go back to when I worked with John Patrick at the early days at IBM. He was sort of their internet guru, and he had this way of saying, we're only a percentage of the way into this thing, and that was 10 years ago. I'd add in there, right? So a lot of it started with phone, right? Because we're able to generate content now. The APIs allow us to consume more and more content. One of the things that you didn't mention was storage. Like I'd throw TiVo in there, right? And set top boxes and DVRs, which allowed us to time shift all of this and led to what we see with Netflix and others right now, sort of that on-demand world that we're dealing with,
which we all take for granted now.
Yeah, like I hate, like, imagine watching a commercial. Like the best and worst thing about about things like Hulu are you've still got commercials, and I'm like, yeah, but I can watch it anytime I want. I'm okay with that. It's a fair enough trade-off. Somebody's got to pay for this stuff.
Well, it's my great frustration with things like MLB, and of course, being a baseball nut, we watch a lot of baseball, which just ended. But the frustration with things like MLB TV is you pay a good amount of money for a yearly subscription. I think it's $170 or something for the season. Yep. And then you still have to watch commercials, right? like, can I get the $250 plan that lets me opt out of any commercials? You know what I mean? And also, I don't know if you've noticed in the streaming services, just mini rant, is that you get the same 3 commercials over and over and over and over again.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen that? If you're going to serve me commercials, give me like 2 dozen. So I don't
make them creative. It should be content.
Right.
Like it shouldn't look like a commercial to me. Mm-hmm. Like it should be its own mini show. A really smart company, like a really smart advertiser right now, would create an entire series of 30-second commercials, of 30-second episodes or segments, and just run them as a series of commercials over an entire season, and that becomes your show.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? We saw kind of the Zoom call.
Great idea for somebody.
Shows. Yeah, it is a good idea. The Zoom call TV shows that we saw in the midst of the height of the pandemic, right? Parks and Rec was the only one I watched. I'm sure you watched the West Wing one.
Yeah.
But, I think there's something interesting there where you could do show reboots that were, something between product placement and advertisement that were still actually a form of entertainment, right? Like if you give me the Parks and Rec cast, I'll pretty much watch them talk about anything for 30 minutes.
West Wing cast, same thing. So,
anyway, it's an interesting content idea. I do think it was the phone that drove this, though. The phone and storage. I think you're right, because we all remember, well, not all of us, most of us that are old remember like VCRs and videotapes and burning CDs and making mixtapes for the crush you had in high school, right? Like here's Beth from Kiss, and here's a Motley Crue tune, right? All of that. But then there was something kind of
mixtape for your crush. Here's a Motley Crue too.
Dude, Motley Crue is sexy. Come on. But then you get the first TiVo, right? You remember the first TiVo where you were just, it was like, holy crap, dude, this is awesome. Yeah, like the idea you could skip a commercial was amazing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and when you look at it, if you look at the people involved in it, you've got to go back. You got to go back to the early folks at Netflix, right? Yeah. That built that infrastructure. I mean, I don't think there's no way they get as much credit as they should, because that is absolutely incredible on what you can do there.
Them, and I think the early folks in APIs, without kind of getting into the companies themselves. But there was so much early work done at various companies around APIs that got us to the point we're on now, where they're easily consumable, but people have already forgotten that took us 10 years.
Yeah.
Right. And the same thing with authentication. You take it for granted now. You just log in with my Google ID or, whatever you're using, it just works. But OAuth took 10 years. SAML in the enterprise took 10 years to get in place. So it really was the moment where all of these 10-year cycles matured enough where we could have this content.
So you've been around, and I guess I have too.
Say, Mike.
Yeah, exactly. I guess if somebody went and looked back, is it does tech run on a 10-year cycle? Consistent historically?
A good question. I don't know. I mean, I think people have tried to nail kind of the 7 to 8 year time frame in the past. I think there's something generational that's interesting about market cycles, right? Like the folks we have in tech now weren't old enough to remember the bust of 2000, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting thing because they don't they're trading stocks in an up market on Robinhood, going, this stock trading thing's easy. No, that's because you're in a bull market, but a liquidity driven bull market is always easy. But so I think there's some of that. I am always a big fan of cyclicality.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, because recently, over the past couple of weeks, I keep hearing some of those old names come back up and not just back up in memories, but as relevant. Right. So I'm hearing Sam and Chet at data stacks. You're hearing Ian Glazer on the identity side a lot more.
Yep.
Kin's ridiculously active on the API side. You're hearing Adrian and others, and that is, they were at the forefront of this, and it almost makes you feel like that experience and that maturity is now in place to rise back again, right? To drive another wave.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do, and not to get too technical on this, but I do wonder how much something like Kubernetes or the container movement, call it, is actually, kind of the last burst of a supernova before it goes black hole, right? Like if we had kind of cloud infrastructure and APIs spawning this massive release of energy, and Kubernetes is kind of the final moment of that. I'm not picking on that's not, I don't mean that in a derogatory way.
No, it's not. Well, it's not.
I mean it in a transformative way, right? We kind of, now we get to like black hole, multiverse, something else on the other side, right?
Technology is exciting. It goes through a growth phase. It gets good enough to where it gets boring.
Yep.
To where everybody's using it and you don't think about it anymore.
Yep.
And then it spawns whatever is new.
So we're entering a boring phase.
Boring phases are great. Boring phases where all the excitement happens.
Yeah. Boring phases and recessions are the best times to be alive.
Yeah. I mean, you're forced to be creative. You're forced to find what's exciting. You're forced to fix the things that you broke earlier.
Yeah, I like it. What's Vital, by the way? What's that on your vest there?
Oh, this is a firm a design firm out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. This is actually it's actually a Land's End, or no, it's Patagonia fleece vest. They're a firm I worked with when I was running brand at Cloud Foundry Foundation, and if anybody looks at the little Cloud Foundry logo.
Yep.
Now, they're the team that we worked with to build that and come up with that, which was if you've ever done naming, branding, or logo work, bring somebody in that does it for a living, because it is hard stuff.
This advertisement brought to you by Mike Maney and Vital.
Yeah, like they're just a small firm out of Portsmouth, but they fit us really well, and they were a blast.
Well, I congratulate you on taking 2 of the 3 wardrobe requirements for Silicon Valley Tech Bros, right? Like,
yes,
sleeve shirt or collared shirt and then a vest. You've got that. So
yeah.
Anyway, back to content. All right. So
it's like I dressed up.
So we've talked about kind of the technical backside of things, or back end of things. What are you watching these days, or reading, or listening to? Oh, I know what the question I was going to ask you was. Have you ever watched a person playing a video game live stream their play? That's
okay.
Fair. Now you've got like 3/4 of a beer.
It's a small glass.
Uh-huh.
I haven't on, that's the whole Twitch thing.
Yep.
There are people that I work with and that I know that's all they do.
Yeah.
Whether they are the ones being watched, or the ones watching other people. It's huge. I mean, AOC just did it the other day with one of the apps, and I think she had it was the largest audience in history on Twitch or something like that. It was something crazy.
Well, there's no doubt that Twitch as a platform is kind of a useful streaming platform, but I think they're kind of a generational dividing line. I've never watched someone stream a video game, and I never could imagine doing it. I just bought a new Xbox last December, and I've played pretty consistently all year long. But I noticed, like, when my stepson comes over and gets on the Xbox, the first thing he does is go into multiplayer mode and get on with other folks and start shooting things, right? Like, he immediately engages with other people. When I turn on the Xbox, I go like, okay, what mission am I on? And where do I have to, I don't want to deal with other humans when I'm on an Xbox, right?
growing up, I was, it was in television and Atari, and you didn't like watching other people play the game.
Right.
You're like, when's it my turn? I want.
Maybe that's what it is. It's a legacy thing. Like you
Yeah.
used to go to the arcade and play Dragon's Lair.
Right. Oh yeah.
Good old fashioned content at the arcade.
Yeah, like I'd kill for some good Space Invaders right now.
Oh yeah. All right. What are you watching these days?
So I'm in a mix, television, movies, big into documentaries. There've been some really good documentaries that have been out, and these are I'd put some of these in must watch for no matter who you are. First is going to be Crip Camp, and it is fantastic. I think it's on Amazon or Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, all of the entire Americans with Disability Act started with a bunch of kids that went to this camp in I think it was the Catskills of New York back in the 60s or early 70s. Kids with disabilities, and they would go up to this camp, and it was just a regular camp for them because everybody was disabled. And the people that came out of that camp, the friendships that they made, the relationships that they made throughout the years, they ended up rising and in becoming these top lawyers and activists that created all of the ADA that you see. Absolutely fascinating story. Somebody had a camera, like an old style camera back when they were going there. So it's like 60s and 70s black and white film.
Yeah.
Recorded them and then found them all years later and had them talk about it. So if you get a chance to watch it, there's some funny lines in there too. I can't say I'm on here. I don't know if the FCC watches this on here, but there's some really funny lines in there too.
Well, so I haven't watched a lot of documentaries. I'm trying to think since the pandemic. I think probably the best thing I've seen documentary wise is The Last Dance, which,
oh God, yes.
I mean, anyone that hasn't seen The Last Dance, I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm not a Bulls fan, or I don't watch basketball, or it doesn't even matter. It's such a cultural phenomenon, and it's such a unique glimpse into the overall phenomenon that was the Chicago Bulls and all of the personalities in that ecosystem.
Yeah.
And then B, the absolutely different individual that is Michael Jordan. Like,
oh yeah,
single-minded, very closed off, very loyal, realize that he shuts himself off from the world to pursue a goal, and maybe to the detriment. Some people have said that Last Dance was largely about him trying to rehabilitate his image in some way, because he's been such a recluse in some ways that huge portions of sports history have been written about him without him having any input. Right. And so it gives you, I think, just a really well-rounded view of him. You see his mania around wanting to win and what he'll do. And I think you also see the raw emotion of when he does win after his father has died and what all that kind of stuff meant to him. So if you haven't seen The Last Dance, that's number one on my list.
And like I watched that one, and the people that stood out for me were Pippen.
Yeah.
Like you don't realize how good of a lieutenant he was, and what he went through, and how he dealt with that. And then I'm a huge Rodman fan. Like he's just nuts. Like I just love it. And there's never been anybody like him in that position. Like he's just like he was great. But the way that Phil Jackson and the other team members, and it's something that I think anybody in business can learn too, the way that they let him realize that they needed to let him be who he was and do what he did, but that he'd constantly show up and deliver when he needed to.
Yep.
And when they needed him, they're like, you do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Be who you have to be. Just be back here. And you could see even Jordan laughed about it.
Well, who gives somebody time off mid-season to go to Vegas and party because he needs?
That's the best part,
Steve, right? Like, no.
Day two of Glucon. Where's Eric? He had a ball in Vegas.
He left. He's gone. Anyway, if really truly, and I mean this wholeheartedly, it doesn't matter if you like sports at all. It does not matter. You will love The Last Dance. Absolutely.
Yeah. Like I'm not a basketball fan. I loved it. Two other ones on that. One is Icarus, which is the about all of the doping. It started with all of the doping that was in the Tour de France with Lance,
Yep.
but it tied into all the Russian stuff. If you get a chance to watch that, again, don't have to like sports. Crazy good. The other one, and I hate to stay on the sports part of this, but you don't even have to like. These are ones that you don't have to like sports about. The Battered Bastards of Baseball.
Oh, I've heard about this.
It's insane. It's just absolutely crazy on how good this is. It was Kurt Russell's dad.
Yeah.
That just created these misfits, and all I will say is when you watch this, stay till the credits.
Okay.
They save some absolute. Did I just read what I thought I read about this guy in the credits?
Okay. I'm all in.
Yeah.
All right, let me switch gears a bit. So
Cool.
one of the things that we've done around here, Kim and I have, is we got tired of streaming new things where there was one season and then we had to figure out what else to watch, or there's a movie and they got to figure out what else to watch. So we resolved to go backwards, right? And it was kind of interesting because we resolved this, I would say, I don't know, 4 months ago, 5 months ago. And then there was that phenomenon on TikTok where Dreams, Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Nicks, gets filmed with the guy on the skateboard cruising downhill drinking cranberry juice. And suddenly Fleetwood Mac is back to #1 on the charts with a song from 1977 or 76. So there, in some ways, there's been this rediscovery of old content that people have either not seen in forever or never seen or heard. That's kind of taking place, which is interesting because I find myself, and I can talk about the shows we went back and watched if you're interested, but I find myself, we went back and watched shows that were old, but I also started rediscovering like the catalog of Jackson Browne, listening to more Bob Dylan, going back and hitting the Beatles again, like kind of digging up old, obviously you and I are Bruce Springsteen fans, but like The River kind of reemerged for me as something I wanted to listen to. So I think there's been a lot of old content discovered as new, or rediscovery of things that we haven't necessarily been listening to in a while, as a result of not a lot of new things getting produced.
It's not a lot of new things getting produced. It's also having the time to do it, right? And resetting. So there is that piece to it. Something that you didn't say in there that I thought was interesting is we actually have access to this now.
I know, right?
Like at the click of a button and a couple of keystrokes, show me Bruce from 1975 playing in Rockland County. Like there it is. Somebody recorded it and you have it. Just having that at your fingertips, it makes it not that everybody's a historian, and like Wikipedia, but you can dive back in and just keep going down those rat holes to keep diving into that. Something I heard from somebody once at the start of the pandemic is they talked about just grabbing one of those old albums and sitting in the backyard with headphones on and tuning everything out and just going front to back on the album and just spending time with it. And I think that's a good way to do it. And it just shows in general.
I mean, you take that Fleetwood Mac album, Rumors, and it's one of those, I don't care if you like Fleetwood Mac. I'd wager dollars to donuts that the first 8 songs on that album, right? Like you won't realize that you know them until you hear them and you go, I know this song. I've heard this song, right? Like it's incredible stuff. So along those lines on the TV route, we went back, and I was mentioning this morning on Twitter to someone. It's easy to do kind of the Office and Parks and Rec round of modern comedy. But we went back and did Cheers and Frasier, which was an interesting rewatch because
I want to hear about Cheers.
Well, Cheers is interesting because
I did this. I tried.
Yeah, there's a lot of like sexual harassment stuff going on in the workplace, which is really interesting to kind of view in the 80s time frame. And then you also get to this one Cheers episode where they, for the first time on network television, I went and read about this. They try to talk about homosexuality in the workplace on Cheers, where one of the characters stands up for the rights of a gay person in the bar. And it was considered at the time completely revolutionary. I mean, you're talking like what, 1984, 5? I mean, 7, maybe somewhere back in that area, right? So there are some cultural artifacts to things. but at the same time, there's this kind of timeless humor in things. You know, I mean, you find yourself going, whoa, wow, I can't believe they said that. But then you're laughing at the next joke, right? And Frasier, I think, is where you get over that hump, because Frasier comes out of the Cheers universe and then moves close enough to the modern time where you're not wincing at certain points and you're actually going, this is just downright funny, right? I mean, so it's odd to go back and do shows like that. And we did the two other shows I was going to mention. We did ER, which has 11 seasons and really holds up through about 9 of them. And then we did 24, which we just finished so that was 9 seasons. So, and in both of those things, you get, like in ER, you get the Gulf War as social issue, and ER was very explicitly anti-Gulf War. You can tell of the show. And you get the emergence of AIDS as a societal phenomenon, which they're very pro research in AIDS in the show, obviously. And then you also get the conflicts in Africa, which I think we've kind of largely forgotten now, with the children being turned into soldiers and all of the atrocities that happen in Africa. So there's these kind of 3 social themes that flow through ER in the middle of that series that you don't notice. And then you get 24, similar societal phenomenon. It's, you know, it's post 9/11. The first 4 or 5 seasons struggle with the idea of torture. And then, you know, as a enhanced interrogation. And then you see the show transition from all terrorists are Muslim to China is the enemy to Russia is the enemy by the end of the show. So on the last season, 24 is saying that Russia is the primary enemy in the world today. And you have this very strange, if you've never seen it, it's Jack Bauer. He's a counterterrorism agent. But you get this strange phenomenon over 9 seasons of watching what turns out to be this Shakespearean tragedy, which is that Jack is devoted to his country, but because he's made that decision, he can never, ever, ever love or have happiness in any way, right? And it's this arc that, like, at the end of the show, we just looked at each other and went, that's it? Like, there's no happy point to all this, right? So anyway, so those are kind of the, you know, Cheers, Frasier, ER, and 24 we've done as historical look backs, and they're all interesting in their own right, I think.
Have you caught up with have you watched Homeland?
We're somewhere into Homeland. I got annoyed with it. I had to put it down for a bit.
Stay with it. If you like 24, you'll like Homeland.
I know I have to see Ted Lasso. Everybody's raving about that, right?
So Ted Lasso, and if you get a chance, follow Charles Arthur on Twitter. He wrote this great piece on it. Ted Lasso should not work. Like, there's no way that Ted Lasso should work. The character shouldn't work. The storyline shouldn't work. The premise shouldn't work, and it does to, like, beyond belief. Like, it just works. I've not heard anybody that hasn't loved it. What's interesting?
Is it a similar vibe to, like, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which is one of my favorites of the last few years?
No, it's a little more bubblegum than that. But it's I don't even know how to describe it. Like, I don't think anybody knows how to describe this damn thing. It's just so quirky and so good. And Jason Sudeikis just nails the character. I don't know how he does that. And just nails it. And there's some other characters in it. It's just fantastic. What's interesting though is Apple TV. I'm assuming they've got a whole bunch of misses underneath, right? When they came out. I don't know what we pay for Apple TV, or I think it's free until February for us with a new iPhone or something like that. They've got Ted Lasso, Long Way Up with Ewan McGregor and Charlie Boorman.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
And
the morning show.
And the morning show,
which is friggin' awesome.
It's Sorkin-esque. It's so good. Like, Apple TV, and this is really hard to say, it's worth it just for those 3. That's the quality that those 3 shows are. Like, it's worth it just for those 3.
We watched one other show on there early on. It was the Jason Momoa one where the whole society's blind and a child is born that can see. It's this kind of post-apocalyptic thing. What is that called? Seesaw? Something. I don't know. You'll find it. Just search Jason Momoa on Apple TV Plus. And it's been renewed, and it's a little sci-fi Game of Thrones-ish. But that was where we started, and I thought, okay, this is interesting. Stick with it. And then we did the morning show, and I was just like, holy crap, that's good.
Well, and on the morning show, you go into it, you're like, there's no way I'm gonna like it. Like, I'm just looking at the
first
characters.
of all, you're thrown off by the fact that you assume that like Steve Carell and Jennifer Aniston, you think it's going to be like a funny thing.
Right.
It's not, right?
No, it's newsroom. I mean, it's West Wing. It's Sorkin. It's
right.
Like it's yeah. That's another one that shouldn't have worked, and it does. Now you mentioned Game of Thrones. I'm going to make one recommendation. I got a whole bunch of recommendations actually. I'll drop them in
get one weird one. Go give me your weird one. I know where you're going.
There is a must watch for everybody. It's 3 seasons. Netflix just canceled it. Netflix, if you're watching, you screwed up. You need to get this in there. Is Norsemen. Yep. Norsemen.
I have not watched it.
You will bust a gut laughing. It is Monty Python meets, I don't know, what's another Norse thing? Game of Thrones. Let's just go with that.
Vikings.
There's right. Yeah, or Vikings. Yeah. It is incredible. They record. It's huge over in Norway. What they do is they actually film it twice. Once in Norwegian and once in English. So it's and the English, they make sure that they have fun with the English idioms and languages.
Right.
So they leave them in there. So there's a little bit of breaking the fourth wall. That it's like, I don't think the Vikings really said that.
So my surprising one from Netflix is The Last Kingdom, which is, I think, 4 seasons or 5 seasons. It's the story of Uhtred, son of Uhtred, right? So if you imagine when the Vikings invaded England, which was not England at the time, which had not yet become a country, and landed on the north and eastern shores there, and then streamed down. And it's the story of, I think it's King Edward trying to unify the country to actually become England, the idea of an England versus all these kind of tribal kingdoms. And what happens as the Vikings come in. And there's a few seasons that kind of go a little sideways with, like, you know, witches in the pre-Arthurian kind of or sense, which is, this is really an early Middle Ages kind of plot. But its background is in historical happenings, and the main character is what's made up. So it kind of uses a historical backdrop, and then because the main character is fictional, it allows you to go all these different places. But you get to see historical events happening, which, if you go and look at the actual record, did happen, right? So historical fiction done on a scale that is pretty similar to kind of a Game of Thrones type of production. So not funny in any way. Lots of heads getting sliced off and bad things happening, but it's really, really a good watch if you're in the mood for something like that.
Speaking of King Edward, we've been watching Man in the High Castle.
Oh yeah.
With the Nazi King Edward by way of Knight's Tale.
People didn't like that show. I love that. We love that show. I thought that show was awesome. I mean, like somewhere late second season, I went from it's all right to holy shit.
So I like it, but I'm sort of in that last season of Lost. What the hell's going on?
Right.
Part, and I think we're in season 2, just going into season 3 right now.
That's about where it clicked for me. It's getting there. Yeah. So, but fun. Lots of fun.
So it's funny because television and just watching stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Passively watching things is the easy part to talk about. What are you reading?
Oh, well.
Right. Books still matter, whether they're, or words, whether they're.
I probably read more now than I do at any point in time, quite honestly. I mean, I read more medical research and scientific research than I ever have in my entire life at this point. Paul and I have a podcast coming out soon on fire, so I've been reading endless pages on fire ecology for weeks on end, and reading things like Plagues and Peoples by William McNeill, which is really an interesting read. The Butchering Art by Lindsay Fitzharris, which is a great read about Victorian surgical practices. And then rereading some fiction. I went back and did The Legends of the Fall novellas by Jim Harrison, which are 3 short stories. One of them is The Legends of the Fall.
Stupid movie. We watched. I remember sitting in the theater and my wife sitting next to me, and the scene opens up with Brad Pitt and long flowing hair and that jacket going on a horse, and you hear every woman in the place going, ah, and you hear every husband going, son of a bitch.
It's have you ever read any Jim Harrison?
No.
Yeah. Well,
I have to watch the movie though. The movie's great.
He lives at the edge of wilderness and the human spirit and kind of the brutality that takes on. So,
Nice.
and all those novellas they're like 70 to 90 pages. So it's an interesting storytelling style because he never tells you everything's described third person on the characters. So it's like recounting a historical record, but it's just shocking in its kind of natural sense. So those are my fiction and nonfiction reads.
Yeah, I'm not a big fiction person except for, every Stephen King that's ever been written.
Just I've never read Stephen King.
Oh, it's a fantastic writer. It's got a flow to it, which is great. As a writer, as somebody who has to put words in and not follow AP style a lot, it's great to be able to follow him. For me, it's been, I finished The Gatekeepers by Chris Whipple, which was a behind the scenes. He went and interviewed all of the presidential chiefs of staff from, I think it was Nixon on up to Obama, which was just fascinating to get a behind the scenes look at the administration aspect of how each of these presidents managed and dealt with stuff, sort of the bureaucracy side of running the presidency. Fantastic book and great writing. Currently, it's taken me forever. Doris Kearns Goodwin's The Bully Pulpit, which I was talking about that with somebody earlier today. It's about the the rise and the friendship between, and then non-friendship between Teddy Roosevelt and William Taft coming up. And if you watch back in that time period, the parallels that she wrote, that she covered in there to today, like literally today and probably Tuesday, are eerie. Like, we're talking Mad Lib, just swap out a couple of names in here. Like that's a fantastic, and she's a great writer, great historian, obviously. And then the one that I'm enjoying right now, and I'm reading this one on on the Kindle, is I started with Charles Mann's 1491, the years before Columbus got here, and now I'm reading 1493. And sort of what happened afterwards. Must reads. Like every kid in high school should be forced to read these.
I agree. 1491 is an absolutely fabulous book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a must read list. It's on the historical side. I will say I finished this last summer, and a friend of mine's reading it right now. But The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William Shirer, Shirer, which won the National Book Award back in the 70s, I believe. And it's about 1,200 pages on the rise and fall of Third Reich. But if you're looking for, I won't even go to the political angles, but if you're looking for just an unbelievable dive into history, that covers, I think, that period better than anything I've read on that area. So,
and I know you've been into some of that medical stuff lately, sort of the historical surgery stuff.
Yeah.
Or it's Halloween. You can talk about it now.
No, it's fun. I mean, Butchering Art's that book, the one that Kudrowski turned me on to, and it's a great read. It is the book you will find yourself enjoying, even though you think you don't enjoy the topic area. So if you think about historical literature, right, things that are telling you a history of something that is done with a literary flair, that's what Lindsay Fitzharris does. She's an excellent writer. She writes like it's fiction while telling you kind of the weird details of what actually happened around the evolution of surgery in Victorian England.
Oh, that's awesome.
So surgeons, not to go into the whole thing, but surgeons in pre-Victorian England were like plumbers in modern America. They were tradespeople. They weren't people that went to school, because surgery never happened. You didn't perform surgery, right? There was no ether. So there's no anesthesia. There's no ether. And we had no idea about infections or germs. So every time you had surgery, you died anyway. So no one had surgery, right? Like, the only people that had surgery were battlefield surgeries, which meant surgery was just cutting off limbs.
Joe's got a saw. Cut this off.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, as a result, you find she talks about the surgeons in Victorian England. They're all these monstrous guys. They're guys that are 8 inches bigger than anyone else in society because they have to be large enough to physically restrain the patient while they saw their leg off, right? So it's talking about how we got from that world to some sense of modern surgery. And it's just a fabulous read. So
if you get a chance, pick up David McCullough's The Greater Journey. It goes into some of that, not only from it goes into sort of the Exodus in early 1800s from Philadelphia and America over to Paris. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot in there about even just the about the surgery that maps up to what you were saying, and as well as the arts. But the surgery, it was the same thing.
You just reminded me. So one last show I want to talk about. I want to know if you're watching this. Then I'm out of beer and we got a football game.
Yeah, I'm two sips down.
Have you seen The Boys on Amazon?
No, I keep hearing about this.
Okay.
My friend Amelia mentioned it. Is this?
Yeah, this is my last one. So you were watching Man in the High Castle on Amazon. Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is my absolute favorite on Amazon.
That one's fantastic. Maisel is another one on the must watch by everybody.
Give me 9 seasons of Maisel, right? Like I'll do that, no problem.
Yeah.
The Boys it's a superhero thing, but it's a superhero story where all of the superheroes are employees of a corporation, and the corporation manages their image and branding so that they can sell the maximum amount of crap, right? And it's very clearly like marveled after the Marvel universe, because the corporation's called Vought, and they talk about the VCU, the Vought Cinematic Universe, right? Like the MCU.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that every last one of these superheroes, except for one or two randoms, are sociopaths. They're corrupt, they're greedy, they're perverted, they're violent, they're just off the charts awful people, right? And the Boys is this underground unit of crime fighters trying to take down the corrupt superheroes. So it's over the top violent, over the top hypersexual, and funny as hell. And if you want something that's just kind of like, what the hell did I just watch? Go check The Boys out, because it's a lot.
Oh, that's good. But so I got to check that one out then. By the way, on Miss Maisel, little known fact: did you know that all of the Lenny Bruce lines are verbatim?
Yeah, it's incredible. And Rachel Brosnahan is unbelievable in that show.
She channels Joan Rivers.
Yeah.
So well. Oh my God.
All right, now we're just fanboying now at this point. So
it's fanboying and good stuff.
Another episode's in the books. We'll see if it turned out, and if it didn't, it's just an excuse to drink another beer.
Think of worse things.
All right. Cheers, Mike. We'll see you later.
Cheers. Bye.